presidential election just concluded, and as you already know, the markets have been blasting off into the stratosphere. With the extreme volatility around the elections, and the introduction of binary betting for who would win, you already know we have some juicy trades to cover in this video. From Reddit users leveraging the US presidential election as a hedge, to Reddit users losing everything shorting Bitcoin. In this video, we'll cover the gains, the losses, and the strategies that actually worked in the last month. Starting with Reddit user ICSurround6994. On November 11th, they posted this screenshot titled 80k to 1.12 mil. This degenerate discovered the way to use binary betting to hedge their FDs. Leading up to the election results, this Reddit user noticed Elon's relationship and close ties with Donald Trump during his campaign and was convinced that a potential Trump victory would cause Tesla stock to move significantly. While planning out their trade, ICSurround discovered that you could place binary bets on the presidential election on platforms like Robinhood and Polymarket. Their plan for a so-called risk-free trade was in motion. The odds were already heavily in favor of a Trump victory, which allowed them to place a 3-1 bet for Kamala Harris to win. They put $15,000, which would net them $45k if they won, for a $30k profit, and at the same time placed a $50k bet on Tesla FDs in case Trump won. In their own words, they said, "In the worst case, I would only lose 10 to 15k, but we all know that there is actually a chance that Trump wins and the markets tank, or at least Tesla doesn't move, and they would lose a total of 65k. But anyways, this Reddit user was so sure that a Trump win would mean deregulation, which would be extremely bullish for Tesla, and they were right. The markets reacted violently to Trump's victory, and it sent stocks like Tesla to the stratosphere. Tesla would go from $270 to $340 after Trump's win in a matter of a few days, and ICSurround6994 cashed out with $1.1 million. The next Reddit user benefited from Trump's victory since Trump's policies and views are extremely bullish for crypto. Reddit user Theosoft Oracle bought some call options on MicroStrategy. If you didn't know, MicroStrategy, or MSTR, is the world's first and largest Bitcoin treasury company. Whenever Bitcoin is pumping, MSTR is also pumping as well, and often more. As you can see over the past 2 months, MSTR has basically tripled due to Bitcoin constantly breaking new all-time highs. Theosoft Oracle started their position 2 months ago. Before that, they were posting massive losses on WallStreetBets. Despite these massive losses, they continued to trade, and luckily for them, their MSTR YOLO would print them massive tendies almost every single day from September to November. Despite the saying, if it's good enough to screenshot, it's good enough to sell, Theosoft held and kept making endless posts with their massive gains on WallStreetBets. It looks like even the mods were tired of him as he posted way too many gains. We've seen many stories where people refuse to sell and end up losing everything. But so far with the diamond hands, they've proved the haters wrong and they were rewarded massively after Trump's victory. Our trader here turned 250k to 1 mil in just 2 months. I already know what you're gonna ask. Did they cash out? Based on their comments, it looks like they're actually planning to exercise the options to get the shares, and in their own words, by exercising, they'll add some fuel to the fire. They're also still opening new longer dated options, or leaps. It seems like they're betting that this rally will basically never end. They're even speculating that some type of crazy melt-up due to gamma squeeze and comparing the potential of a GameStop-like frenzy soon, if not more insane. Will they end up losing everything, or reach their goal of 10 million? We'll just have to wait and see if Bitcoin surpasses 100k or if post-election frenzy ends when Trump starts his term. On October 29th, Reddit user GameStop with a 0 posted this screenshot, with 554,843 in gains, up 339% in the first year of trading. It turns out that this Reddit user only traded stock and never really touched options, which rubs some people in WallStreetBets the wrong way. But anyways, we're gonna go over their strategy and see what we can take away from their massive year. Based on their post history, they mentioned that they started looking at the overall macro of the economy. They would try to identify themes and sectors that would perform well in the current macro environment. Use fundamental analysis to find strongest companies that are in those sectors. Use technical analysis to figure out if the stock is behaving as you would expect, and then find what price you would want to enter your position. I assume they mean key support levels and stuff like that. They would set a stop loss and a trailing stop loss for each play. and they would regularly assess how each investment is correlated to others and how much percent at risk between all positions at their current prices and stop losses. Lastly, they monitor macro, company news, insider transactions, earnings, and general knowledge of technical analysis to inform how or when they would adjust their trailing stop loss or trim their position as the trade progresses, and when to take profits. Of course, not every single one of their plays plan out, and because they would put majority of the portfolio into high beta stocks, they had massive gains and losses. They mentioned that their biggest gain was $110K and their biggest loss was $70K. Most importantly, they acknowledged that there was a huge element of luck for their plays to work out, as the markets generally have been on easy mode to the upside this year. It's also important to note that their plays were probably much easier to manage, since they were just stocks and they didn't need to worry about theta decay. If you want to know what they traded, they mentioned that the majority of their plays revolved around tech stocks and corn, the two pillars of America's economic engine. If you're new to WallStreetBets, people used to say corn instead of Bitcoin because it was banned from the sub for a while. Anyways, majority of the gains came from Bitcoin, SMCI, AMD, and nuclear-related stocks like OKLO, SMR, and LEU. According to them, they started doing extensive research into nuclear after Microsoft's 3 Mile Island announcement, which basically meant they were investing in nuclear energy to power their data centers, which have been expanding rapidly due to AI demands. The next Reddit user, Random Chicky Bomb, made a ton of money on Bitcoin, but then decided that because it's gone up for so many days in a row, it must come down. Some of you will already know this from my previous video where I talked about the gambler's fallacy, and well, this is exactly what happened to this Reddit user. You see that their daily P&L was slowly climbing up until they woke up one day and decided that this is it. This is the top. It's been green for far too long. Now, you might think that this person is just making a rookie mistake for the first time, but from their post history, they claim that they turned 1K to almost 3.6 million in 2022 and then lost it all trying to short Ethereum. You'd think that they would have learned their lesson, but to make it worse, Chicky Bomb shared that they actually owe over $66,000 in tuition to their university and they're getting kicked out of school until they can pay the remaining balance. According to them, they've always been a degenerate, using their trading money to pay for school, but now they're only left with 4.9K, but they're determined to trade their way back. On November 8th, Reddit user SD Puntapa made this post with the title 70K gain thanks to the Trump trade no one talked about. Everyone piling into Tesla, Bitcoin, DJT, etc., and no one ever mentioned Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. These two companies have been orphaned ever since their conservatorship 15 plus years ago during the Great Financial Crisis. During Trump's first presidency, he implemented steps to re-privatize the entities, and with him back in office, the market reacted accordingly. I started building my position in the junior preferreds a little over a year ago. Should mention that there's still room to run. Most of the junior preferred issues are trading at around 30% of their face value. I only hold the junior preferred shares as the common will most likely get wiped out in any recap or release scenario. It will be interesting to see who Trump picks as his Treasury Secretary in the coming weeks. John Paulson is one of the names being floated around. He famously bet against the subprime mortgages during the Great Financial Crisis and holds a large amount of Fannie and Freddie Jr. preferreds. Now, if you didn't understand what I just said, that's okay, because I don't think SD Puntapa understood what they just said either. One correction, as another Redditor pointed out, is that Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac did not and does not originate the subprime loans. Do your research on the 2008 financial crash. They were the scapegoats for banks and ended up bailing out $100 billion in bad loans from the banks. Since the post doesn't really make the Trump play clear, let me try to explain. If you've never heard of conservatorship before, it basically just means that some government entity, in this case the Federal Housing Finance Agency, or FHFA, took over the management of operations of the two companies in 2008. This was done to stabilize them during the Great Financial Crisis, protect the housing market, and prevent a broader economic collapse. Because of the conservatorship, the company has been very limited in its ability to grow. For example, all of their profits are sent to the US Treasury rather than benefiting shareholders. The money they would get back from being privatized again would mean that they can use it for growth and or distribute the money back to shareholders via dividends. Another Reddit user thinks that FMNA could go up to $50 or more, but they've been waiting for this company's conservatorship to end for almost 10 years. Now, what does this have to do with Trump? The hope is that Trump will select someone for Treasury Secretary, a position that plays an important supportive role when it comes to stabilizing the financial system. The hope is that Trump would select someone that would push for the privatization of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. One of these names, as mentioned before, is John Paulson. He's known for making over $4 billion for his firm during the Great Financial Crisis. Before you go and look more into this play, it is important to note that in 2016 to 2017, when Trump was elected the first time, people on Wall Street Bets, when it was much smaller and lesser known, thought it was for sure going to the moon when Trump won, and he was for sure going to privatize them. Of course, it never happened, and those bag holders are still holding today probably.